at all, or
No, you're good.
Yeah, I'm not using headphones or anything.
We're all good. Welcome back, everybody. We are the Jocks of All Trades podcast. I'm Brad, and I'm joined by not one, but two special guests this week. First off, I have Connor, film enthusiast friend. My wife accuses me of this being my boyfriend. Anyways, that's where
I'm honored, Brad.
Yeah. And I also have Dr. Brannon joining us. He is my associate pastor, worship pastor, just pastor. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe that. Also a professor of theology. Yes. What specifically?
Something worship and practical theology.
Yeah. So we are going to join together three different, three-pronged attack, if you will, on what our top 5 worst movies ever seen are. If you recognize the face on the bottom here, he was with us for our top 5 favorite TV shows. We kind of talked about this in the background and said, hey, it would be really cool if we did this. And then Lifetime, everything happened, and it didn't happen until now, which is great. So I brought both of these guys in because I knew it was going to cause a lot of colorful film suggestions to avoid, which excites me because if it was just me, you'd get really boring, bland films. So this is good. I'm very excited for this. The way that we run this usually, fellas, we'll go back from 5 up to 1. Before 1, we'll do our honorable mentions, and then we'll talk about our gold medalist, which usually is good, but not necessarily under this light. Who would like to kick us off with a number 5?
Boy, I guess I can start us off, I guess.
Let's do it.
All right. So I was telling Brad earlier that I've kind of brought mine into categories. So I'll just start with my first category then, which Brad said he was going to try to avoid, but I'm not going to try to avoid, which are superhero films, because there are a lot of bad superhero movies, and trying to pick between them all is really, really hard. I mean, True. There's stuff like Green Lantern, Justice League, Morbius, and I think my pick for this one is Suicide Squad, the 2016, 2017 version. The first one. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
So, confession time. When I was much more wild than I am now, tequila and a kitchen counter makes for really terrible tattoo decisions. So I have not 1, but 2 tattoos from the Suicide Squad 2016 film. So I'm so glad you brought that up, Connor, because I love being reminded of that every day. Thank you so much for that.
I feel like the podcast just became like now I'm in the confessional with you as one of your pastors about bad tattoo decisions.
That's true.
Yeah. And bad movie endorsements.
Yeah,
honestly, yeah, it's terrible. It's so bad. I mean, the story behind it is really interesting of like why it's so bad, but just from everything of them saying like, oh, there's all this like problems with post-production, I don't think there's a good movie in there with the performances and like the stuff that they have in it. So there was nothing about that movie that I liked, which there's very few movies where there's nothing about it that I like.
Yeah.
So I went to see that movie so I teach at a seminary, and we have intensive courses a few times a year where students come to campus and take an on-site class. And normally we teach online. And that week I went with a group of students to see that movie. Oh, they're all adults, and we were all like, I don't even know what was that, Mm-hmm. And the second one was actually pretty good, but the first one was
bad.
Yeah, so bad.
It's terrible. Yeah.
Never let someone pick your tattoos for you. That is what you should take away from that.
Wise words.
If you hear this will be really cool, man, that's not it. So that's a good 5. That's a good 5. I'd kind of forgotten that film existed, sort of, because it was bad enough that it was like, here it is, and it's gone. Like, you can't even find it on DVD anywhere. Like, it's just gone.
Well, here's the crazy thing about it is because like I'm a big fan of like watching the Academy Awards. I think they're kind of stupid in some ways, but I just love watching them and I love watching the movies and that sort of thing. That year also Silence came out, the Martin Scorsese film, which is phenomenal and is absolutely incredible and completely underrated. And it was also nominated for an Oscar. And so the crazy thing is that Silence didn't win anything that year, but Suicide Squad did. So Suicide Squad has more Oscars than Silence does.
That's messed up.
Right? What kind of a world are we living in?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
That's awful.
What did it win? Like audio production or
costume
something?
design, I think.
Costume design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
or maybe makeup. I'm not sure.
There
One of
were
those.
costumes, so I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Wow.
that's a good 5.
Yeah.
It now passes on to you. What is your 5?
All right. Well, I was glad that when you hit me up to do this, I was glad to look back in my iPhone notes from the last podcast we did about our favorite TV shows that I had already started a list of worst movies because we talked about it way back then. Because I was like, crap, what are these? What are my? I even asked Gloria, my wife. I said, help me think of. And then I looked and I went, oh, I've already got 5. This is great. And then I changed a couple, but I'll start. These are kind of in no particular order, and I feel like I should say something really that makes me sound really snooty about how like I just had a hard time with this because I just don't watch bad movies. I'm just so discerning and discriminating in my impeccable tastes that I just don't watch very many bad movies. So of course I'm sticking, like you said, the worst movies that we have seen. I even looked at some lists of like Ebert's list of the, what does he call them, the
Two Thumbs Down,
the Golden Turkey Awards,
yes,
or something like that, and some other lists of worst films. And I was like, I have seen hardly any of these, so these are just ones that I didn't like, and that's it. So my number 5 is Dumb and Dumber.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
and
no.
Yes, my number 5 is Dumb and Dumber. I just I can't do the like potty humor, like 10 minutes on the toilet. Like it just did nothing for me. And people, constantly tell me I need to give it another chance. And I'm like, no, I do not want to devote any more of my life to that movie. So the one line about the skis at the gas pump is funny. Like I did appreciate, when he's like, skis, huh? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, they yours? Yeah. Both of them? Like, that's a good line. But otherwise, like, I just could have totally done without that movie. Tell me why I'm wrong, Connor.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just think that's one of the funniest. I mean, it's not everyone's humor, definitely. I completely get that, but man, that was a pivotal movie for me, especially like in high school. I'm a huge Jim Carrey and a Jeff Daniels fan, and to be introduced to Jeff Daniels like that and then see his whole other work was just absolutely mind-blowing. And I just think they're at their peak in that. I love it.
Oh man. Hang on. Best. I'm already thinking of the next thing to do. Sorry. How about the best bad movies that we secretly love? That should be one that we should do.
Well, that's a totally different category. Yeah.
True. Sorry. I'm gonna start catapulting this way. That's a good 5. No, I agree with you. I can't. I've tried. Like my wife loves Step Brothers, and I try, and I'm like, like I can hear her behind me walking. I'm waiting for her to come in here and say Step Brothers is great.
Masterpiece.
It's okay. Like, come on. Like after a while, I'm just like, just shut up. Or just like, can I watch something else? Like it just kills me. Like that kind of humor is funny, but after the 10th time, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm not getting anything out of this. I guess that would make me a snob also in terms of my movie taste. Because of that, I'm going to crap on a movie trilogy, and it's always the third movies in a trilogy usually that suck. So I'm going to go ahead and preface that. My 5 is Glass. I just couldn't. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I'm sorry. When you build like an Avengers level, all these cool super powered people are getting together and it's like real life, and then you drown one of them in a puddle at the end, like like it hurt me. I'm like, oh, they're dead. All of them are okay. All right, cool. That's great. I wasted 2 hours of just like, hey, here's all these powered people that we could have killed 2 movies ago, but we didn't. So we made a big movie, made you come to it just to kill them. Like, it hurts me. I tried really hard not to put Glass on here, but just I think for me it was more of like a what you built it as versus what you gave me kind of disappointment more than like the film itself sucked. But you can't drown somebody in like they drowned him in a puddle. Like that bothers me. I can picture it because it bothered me so bad. You guys have that with movies that you don't like. You can just picture certain parts of it. Like I hated it. So Glass is my 5. I'm sorry. Why am I wrong, Connor?
Well, I gotta ask, how is that your Shyamalan pick? I mean, you got The Last Airbender, you got After Earth, you got The Happening, you got The Visit, all terrible movies, and it's
Lady in the Water.
Oh, see, I'll actually kind of defend Lady in the Water. It's kind of terrible, but man, I kind of love it. I get why it's a bad movie.
I could have put Old here and been happy with that.
No, I liked Old.
I like
yeah.
Really? I was iffy on Old. The concept was great. I feel like how they like executed the concept was lacking. Like it was just so abrupt of like, oh, hey, they're dying for no reason. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, they're not dying for no reason, but you know what I mean? I was like, oh, okay. Like there was no other way to do this, guys. I don't know. That's just me. But let's see, 5. Oh, we're on 4. I should know how to count backwards. So that's not good.
I haven't seen Glass yet, actually. So I've kind of been putting it off because we started watching some of the good Shyamalan films with our kids. And so I wanted to like rewatch Unbreakable and we did. We watched Unbreakable with them and then we were like, Split might be a little too edgy and we were going to wait a little while. And so that's kind of why I haven't gotten around to watching Glass yet because I wanted to rewatch all of them to get there. But anyway, maybe I should prepare. I'll prepare for disappointment.
Okay.
Awesome.
Gosh.
Should I start with my 4 or are we going in continuous order? Okay, cool. Man. So for number 4, this is kind of like my just not really as themed, but just kind of movies that I hated that maybe some people like. There's a couple of these that are in that, but so it's honestly kind of a toss-up. I don't know. Actually, so there's one of these movies that I think some people like, but then the other ones are just absolutely hated.
I'm worried.
So one is Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and kind of any Ralph Bakshi movie. He was a big animation guy in like 70s, 80s, that whole sort of thing.
The animated.
You're talking about the OG animated ones?
Not okay. So if you're thinking about The Hobbit, the Rankin and Bass one, not that one because I love that one.
Okay. I was like, Connor, no.
No, it's the original animated Lord of the Rings. That is just it's so terrible. Don't watch it. It'll kind of ruin some of Lord of the Rings for you. But then once you watch the new ones, it gets better. But that's not my pick. So Book of Henry, also a terrible movie. Don't watch it. The Judge, also a terrible movie. But my number 4 pick is Cats, because that's not even a movie.
See, again, I didn't see it because I just knew it was bad. My friends and I, we watched it like we're like, oh, ironic watch, like we'll like laugh and make fun of it. And it was just like too cringy to even do that. Like it's just so bad. That would be unbelief.
Having seen a production of Cats, I could have warned you of that way ahead of time.
Yeah. Yep. So that's my 4.
All right. I won't argue because again, I haven't seen it. But since you went recent, I'm gonna do a couple of out of order. I have a couple of superhero movies on here too. But you went recent and one that's kind of divisive, and so I'm gonna skip my 4. I'm going to change my order. Yeah. So my number 4 is going to be Tenet by Christopher Nolan, 2020. All right. I don't think even Christopher Nolan understands what that movie was supposed to be about, or like how the science fiction of it actually worked. Like, it didn't make any sense. I love every single Christopher Nolan movie I've ever seen except for that movie. And I love Christopher. I mean, I was so confident in it that when I went to the Redbox to get it, because I didn't catch it in the theater, I just went ahead and they offered for me to buy a copy at the Redbox for like $4.99 or $3.99 instead of just renting it for $2. And so I bought it. So now I own a copy of this movie that I really don't have any desire to ever watch again, because I don't think it made any sense. Anyway, so tell me why I'm wrong.
No. I thought, like, if you watched it just once and only once, you'd hate it. That was my opinion, because the first time I watched it, I was like, then the second time is way better. Now I've watched this movie 6 times. Okay. So I like this film, but it's just because every time I try to catch something I missed the first time. And I get where you're coming from. I do. So I can't be mad. I'm just surprised that you said it, because I was like, oh, I thought people liked this movie.
And it was, that's part of why I have at least one more that you all are going to react that way to. But but I mean, we finished the movie and I looked at my wife and I was like, I think I'm a pretty intelligent person. I mean, I think, or I at least have the stubbornness to earn a PhD, right? I don't know. But like, that movie was bananas and it made no sense. And I think Christopher Nolan knows it made no sense. And he's just seeing how much he can punk us that we're going to keep going to see his movies. And I'm not kidding. I love every single other Christopher Nolan movie I've ever watched. And I've seen all of them. I think I've seen every single one of them. But that one, nope.
It's crazy though, because you're not the only person I know that doesn't like Tenet. Well, my best friend, like, he will watch it. And he watched it the first time. He was like, okay, maybe I just didn't get it. Watched it a second time. He's like, okay, maybe I didn't. He watched it 3 times before he goes, I hate this film. I'm like, you watched it 3 times. Like,
you shouldn't have to do that. Like, that's just should not be required of an entertainment medium,
Yeah. See, okay. So I'm gonna go too deep into it, but I am gonna do a little bit of a defense, because I love it, but I completely get why people didn't like it, because I mean, it came out at the beginning of lockdown, and it was the one thing where I'm like, I gotta go see it in theaters, so I'm gonna brave going out into public into a theater. And there were like 4 other it was like a family of 4 people there, and they like left halfway through, and I'm like, honestly, I understand, because it is like by far his most obtuse movie, and I was like, there's no way that this is going to be a blockbuster. Like, he's like, it's going to be the return of the movies. I'm like, Chris, it's not. Like, I love it, but it's not. And it's definitely not for everyone. But I really appreciate like what he's doing, because I feel like most of his movies are pretty explanatory in like story, tone, that whole sort of thing. Like, you can track with it fairly easily in comparison to, other movies. But I felt like this was kind of like him being like, how much can I really test this and tell a story like backwards, basically, and inside out. And if I don't know if you guys know about the Criterion Collection at all, but it's like a collection of like kind of artistic and movies that are important to history, time, all that sort of stuff. And so he does a lot of work with them, and so he has a list of like some of his favorite movies. And so going in knowing what some of his favorite like international films are, and like ones that mess with time so much, it made sense to me. There's a great Alain Resnais film
and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's an Alain Resnais film called Je t'aime that is absolutely incredible. That I feel like he takes a lot from, where it is just, there's no narrative consistency in it, and it is all fragmented memories kind of thrown around. And I feel like he was trying to do that with it, and so that's why I really appreciate it. That's my little rant. I understand why you don't get it though. I understand. I completely do.
I part of it is just resentment that like, like, don't make me feel stupid, Christopher Nolan. I'm not stupid. Like this, no, it's not me, it's you, it's the movie. It's
you got to admit though, that last battle scene was
It
That's
was
sweet though.
it was the spectacle of it
Mhm.
was fabulous, and I wouldn't expect anything less from him. But just narratively, I was just like that. No, and I probably will watch it again actually at some point when I just run out of everything else to watch. But yeah, since I own it, I probably should.
Yeah, it's so common too that the things that we hate typically we own or have owned or yeah, I might get a similar reaction that you just got with my 4. So we're just gonna rip the band-aid off really quick. I love Quentin Tarantino, except I hate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I hate it.
I get that.
Speaking of movies that made me feel like, why did I just sit down for 3 hours and watch this? That was that film. Like, I get that it wasn't super gory with Tarantino. It wasn't like languagey. I'm fine with it not being that way. But if you're going to pursue something else, make it make sense. And that movie just like made me feel stupid because I'm like, who's this? What are they doing? Why is he important? What happened to that girl? Like, the memes that have come out of it are really funny, but the movie itself just blows, and I feel bad because so Connor and I are on Letterboxd. I don't know if you know what Letterboxd is, but it's a site where you can track every movie you've ever watched, review them, rate them, everything like that. And I've seen the reviews on this. People love this film, and I just feel stupid because I'm sitting here going, I hate it, I detest it, and I can't get on board with it. So yeah, that's my 4. I can't.
That's pretty good.
I own it.
It's definitely kind of one of his meh films for me. And yeah, I kind of I'm somewhat ambivalent about Tarantino. I pretty much always see his films. I think there's only 1 or 2 that I haven't, but yeah, that one wouldn't make the top half of his list for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I like it a lot less than a lot of my other friends do. It's definitely not my favorite of his, but yeah.
For sure.
Okay, so my number 3, comedy. There's a lot of really bad comedies, and I don't like Adam Sandler comedies. Are kind of very high up there for me. And gosh, there's so many to choose from with that, like Pixels, Grown Ups. But I think my number 3 pick is Jack and Jill. That movie is just an atrocity. It is absolutely insane. It's the one where he plays like kind of himself and then also his sister, and it is it has Al Pacino in it, and he's an ad campaign guy and for Dunkin' Donuts. And so they hire on Al Pacino, and there's this whole like commercial sketch of the Dunkachino, and man, and then I had a Dunkachino while watching it, and I was like, and it made me sick. So it's bad on all fronts.
Oh man, I haven't seen it.
My father-in-law warned me about that movie because he was like, "Have you guys ever seen Jack and Jill?" Like just out of the blue, and we're like, "No." He goes, "Well, it's a Sandler film." He goes, "Don't watch it." That's all he said. That was the whole conversation. We texted him back. He didn't say anything. That's all he said. So I was like, I guess I won't watch that film. Like, like why? Like if it's out of the blue, it must be that important of like, don't watch it. So that right there explains everything as to why he said, don't watch it. That sounds awful. I'm sorry.
I will say it was almost beat out by The Ridiculous Six because I don't know how on earth that movie got made. But
that movie's rough. It's definitely a movie that was made. That's all I can say about that. Oh gosh. That's a good 3. I like it.
Jack and Jill on the do not watch list. Although I did see Pixels. That was pretty bad.
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm. Is my connection funky at times? What's happening?
A little bit, yeah.
I lost Connor there for a second. I'm wondering if it's me. Anyway, I usually don't have problems zooming, etc. But all right. So we're on 3, right? So I'll go ahead and do I'll go ahead and put my other one in order since I flip flopped. And this one, this was the only one on my list that Rotten Tomatoes agrees with me. So 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, 1997. Joel Schumacher. Anybody ready to guess?
Is
Batman and Robin?
Independent? Oh, yeah.
I was going to say Batman Forever. I was so close to saying Batman Forever.
Yeah, Batman and Robin. I love Batman. I mean, this is high school for me. This is the year I graduated. You know, I grew up on the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and and they just kept getting worse and worse, and it was sad. So you get there with all of the rubber suits with the nipples and the butts and the crotch shots and the and the puns with Schwarzenegger and Uma, and it just doesn't get much worse.
It's bad.
Pretty rough.
Anyway,
yeah.
That's
makes
probably
you feel better. It's not. My dad listed that as one of the movies when he was listing his 20 movies. He said, "How about Batman and Robin?" It's like, I mean, yeah, but I have other fish to fry. But it's definitely awful. I agree with you. I feel like I'm just picking the movies that make me angry because I watch them. I think that's what I'm picking.
That was one of my criteria.
Yes.
Yeah. That was definitely one of my criteria as well.
Actually, you know what? Let's keep up with the theme. This is my 3. I promise I'm not pandering or trying to fit in. My 3 is a Batman film, but it is more recent as of 2016. It is Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Sucks.
Yeah.
One of my personal favorite memories in my own world view. I in the middle of this film after the Martha thing and they did everything, I literally just said pick a plot line out loud. I was so mad and I didn't realize I said it out loud, and then I started hearing come from the theater. I was like, I'm sorry, it's just bad. It's just bad storytelling. Justice League should have come before Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. You should have established everybody, then do the spinoff, then do all that stuff. I don't want Doomsday before Superman. That's Superman's villain. I guess he showed up and then died. I didn't care. Was I supposed to care when Martha? Why'd you say that name? That will live on forever in infamy and some of the worst film moments ever. It's just so if it is a comic, it is cheesy. Sure, comics are cheesy, but there's too cheesy. You just go past the line. It's like Ben Affleck's Daredevil. As soon as you get into that world, you're just like, I wish I hadn't, and I'd like to stop. And that was just Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. So, I mean, if you're rating it on how it looked kind of thing, sure. I mean, it looked visually, aesthetics, sure, all that. But in terms of story, it was just horrible. And I don't, there was an after credit scene, but I don't think I stayed for it. I think as soon as the credits rolled, I think I was out. I just did not care. It was awful. So yeah, that'll round out 3 for me.
I mean, that's the thing with Zack Snyder's films. It's they all look really pretty, but are there really any good ones? Even 300, whenever people are like, yeah, that's the one, I'm like, yeah, it's not that great. It's, I don't know if you guys like 300 or anything, but I think it's a bit
I haven't
overrated.
seen that one.
Yeah.
I've generally avoided his movies, but I've seen the superhero ones, like the Superman, Batman, and Justice League ones.
Yeah.
Middling, I think, is the best word I can use for Zack Snyder films.
Mm.
It's there, it's films, but it's not good. Neither is it the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just there. So go figure. Anyways, 2. We're on 2 now.
2. Okay. Number 2 for me is Disney remakes. I'm a huge Disney fan, and I love Disney movies, at least the animated ones. But I still don't think there's been a single one of the remakes that I've actually liked in any capacity. I mean, so even narrowing this down, and I'm still trying to figure out. A lot of people stand for Jungle Book. I don't think it was that good. So I mean, Jungle Book, Pinocchio, Alice in Wonderland, even the Chip and Dale movie that came out, I thought was just abysmal. Do you like the Chip and Dale movie? Okay.
It was funny, but I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah,
the recent one.
Literally think, yes, the recent one. I literally think that John Mulaney was in the studio and they just like handed him his lines and they're like, all right, read this. And he did it on the first take and like, that's good. Because I don't know what is going on with his performance in that movie.
It's John Mulaney, so that checks out.
But I'm not going to go into. I could go into a whole rant about this movie. I'm not going to.
That's not your pick.
Right? That's not my pick. That's not my pick. But oh man, I'm okay. I'm gonna have to decide between my one that I'm not picking is Maleficent, but it is terrible. But my number 2 pick is Aladdin. Because
I knew it. I was sitting here on top of my stuff. I was like, I'm gonna type Aladdin just to see if it's Aladdin.
Yeah,
the recent one, the
recent one,
live action,
Will Smith one. I was just like, I mean, talk about a soulless movie. Which also Space Jam. You can't see my finger because it's phasing out. This is a soulless movie too. But
yeah, man,
there was nothing about that movie that was. Like it was just the most like, why on earth did this get made other than for money? And it was bad because like going into it, I was like, man, is Will Smith going to be the worst part? And I'm like, no, he's the best part, but that's not saying anything because the rest of this movie is just terrible.
Just trash.
It looks so bad. I don't understand how these Disney remakes have some of the biggest budgets of any movie and just look terrible the entire time. Like The Lion King looks awful, and it's like one of the highest grossing movies of all time and one of the most expensive movies of all time, and they can't make it look good and they can't get anything good with it. The guy who played Aladdin was just one of the least charismatic actors I have ever seen. I just thought he did a terrible job with it. I mean, everyone did a terrible job in that movie. I was just like, did anyone know what they were making when they were doing this? That's one that makes me really mad.
Yeah. And I was thinking about Lion King actually. I didn't put any of those remakes on my list, but it's like you took a perfect animated movie and then made like an even more highly animated movie. That's terrible. That has none of the like soul and compassion and like empathy and emotion of the first one, no matter how good your CGI is or whatever.
My 2 picks of remakes that I would actually want to see, but I know it could hurt me so much because I love these movies so much, are Atlantis and Treasure Planet are the 2 that I think could actually benefit from.
This is why we're friends, Connor.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Thank you. 2 very underrated movies. I will say Treasure Planet is probably actually my favorite Disney movie.
Oh yeah, I watched it 2 nights ago. You should have told me. You should have come over.
Yes. So anyways,
right on.
That's awesome.
All right, shifting gears a bit. I'm still gonna my number 1 would fit really good after this, but I'm gonna save it for number 1.
Okay.
So my number 2 is the 2002 Bond installment, Die Another Day, with Halle Berry. I got on a Bond kick recently, and I rewatched like all the Pierce Brosnan ones that came out when I was in high school, and again they just keep getting worse and worse. Each one's a little bit, and I just couldn't believe how bad that one was, and that it even nevertheless still garnered 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. I thought, seriously, I was expecting teens or 20s, but yeah, it's just really bad. So, and I like Bond movies. It's hard to really disappoint me, no matter how, I mean, the camp factor and stuff is just built in, so it's not just because of that, but that one is just really bad.
I'm going to railroad us for a minute because I've wanted to watch the Bond films. Where are you watching them?
Well, I guess I'm just popping around between streaming services because some of them, like we have a Roku, so I just go to the Roku search and then I just find but then I also have a good friend who has the whole like collection too. So if stuff isn't available on for free on a streaming service.
Yeah.
It seems like Amazon had a lot of them for a while for free on Prime, and then HBO has had a few. So yeah,
I'll have to get on that. I've not seen any Bond movie ever, so
really, wow.
yeah, I'm Bondless. So
Well, all in my opinion, all the Daniel Craig ones are really good. And then the real several of the early ones are really good as well. And then they're kind of hit and miss otherwise, but
that makes sense.
Yeah. I will say I do have a soft spot for Die Another Day because it was the first Bond movie that I saw. I realize it's terrible, but I do, there's still part of me that's just like, oh, the first taste,
Yeah. That was 2002. Yeah. And you guys have to remember, I was born in the late 70s. So we have when and how we experience some of these movies makes a big difference in their impact, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yep.
Well, I'm ready to kick off some controversy, Connor. I decided to look at Letterboxd while we weren't here. So I already know that you're going to attack me on this one, and that's okay. My second one is it's a Terry Gilliam film from 2018, and I just couldn't get into it. It's The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. I was so confused for an entire film. Like, I got it, but I didn't get it at this. Like, I was just back and forth of like, what's happening? Like, is this guy just having a mental breakdown and they're just filming him having a mental breakdown? Like, I was so lost. This one didn't make me mad. This one just made me go, why did I spend the money just to watch this film? I'm so confused. So I think this is my tenet. This was my tenet of like what I can't figure out in my brain. And I popped over to see who the director was, and that's when I saw your score for it. And I'm sorry, I just couldn't. I couldn't do it.
Man.
Maybe
Terry
if
Gilliam's
I watched it again, because I like watching things again and again and again and again and again and again. But the first viewing was just like,
He's one of my guys. I mean, there's maybe only one of his movies that I don't like, and even so, that's not like a really don't like. It's like it's still interesting. I love him as a director so much. The first time I watched it, I was like, wow, that was a lot different than what I thought it would be. But my co-host from my podcast said it. I think he said it perfectly. It was like it's so out there. It's a very like messy masterpiece because there are just so many really good elements, but they're just completely strewn about in it, and it is kind of incoherent at points. But I think just knowing who Terry Gilliam is and his filmmaking style, I think really helped me to love it more. So yeah, I mean, it does hurt a little bit, but yeah, I get it. It's a weird movie.
I haven't seen that, and I like the Terry Gilliam films I've seen. I love Monty Python.
it's
I love Brazil, so I'm gonna have to put it on my list, and then I'll tell you guys which one of you I agree with. So
would weird be a good way to just encapsulate that whole film, though? It's just weird.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all of his movies you could just say are just weird.
Yeah, but there's weirds I can get into. This was just weird.
Oh, you haven't seen anything until you've watched Tideland. That is like
I haven't.
One of the craziest movies ever.
Tideland.
Yeah, it's a movie that he made in mid 2000s with Jeff Bridges.
Add that to our movie list.
That's a weird movie. I would just say to watch with other people. That's probably a good one to just watch by yourself.
I'm searching for this movie on Roku, the one that Brad mentioned, but then Tideland, because I just searched for Terry Gilliam like while we're talking because I'm in my bedroom. And I'm gonna just read the description that Roku has of Tideland. After her parents die from drug overdoses, a girl copes by inventing a fantasy world populated by squirrels and severed dolls' heads.
Yeah, and she taxidermies her dad.
Say that again? What? Are you serious?
A fantasy world populated by squirrels and severed dolls' heads.
Okay, yeah, that probably takes the cake over The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. What? That sounds insane.
Tideland. Yeah.
Okay, Tideland.
And according to Roku users, it's 1 out of 4 stars. But
wow. I mean, yeah, it's very off-putting. I will say that.
Before we get into honorable mentions, I did an oopsie and forgot to mention who Connor is. So you guys have heard us talk about Rules of the Frame podcast, and that I have a friend, and he's doing film professory stuff. This is him. Sorry about that. That should have been more exciting of me, but I forgot. But that's okay. Rules of the Frame you can find on Spotify. Is it just Spotify? Where else can you find it?
Oh, we're on like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. They do much better movie reviews than we do. But ours are very hectic. We have no, like, I've listened to your podcast. We don't have, like, you have a sense of, here's what this movie is, and here's where we're going to take this next part of the movie. We're just like, did you like it or not? What'd you like about it? So, I mean, you can have the very nice, astute, put together version of a movie podcast, or you could come to the Trailer Trash podcast. Either one's fine. As long as you're listening to somebody, I don't care. Anyways, let's go to honorable mentions. Connor, you start, I think.
Okay. I kind of like left the spot as just kind of my other thing. Again, I love Disney movies, but there's some Disney movies that really suck, and a lot of recent ones really do. And these are two that just made me mad because, again, like there are in between peaks of like really good Disney moments and just absolutely bombed for me. But Big Hero 6 and Raya and the Last Dragon, I think, are absolutely terrible movies.
Big Hero, big, well, what?
Yes, I'm sorry. That movie just drove me up the wall. I'm sorry. I know people love it for Baymax. He just didn't really do it for me. That the plot holes in it were so massive that I just, all the characters fell into them. They're the plot holes that are at the end of the movie. Yeah. So
that's painful.
You've already smuggled in about like 12 honorable mentions.
I know. I'm sorry. So that's
you're on like 24.
I cheated. I'm sorry. I'm really bad at this.
That's okay.
Is that your only one? Is your only honorable mention?
It's Big Hero 6 and Raya and the Last Dragon.
Okay.
Because I had such high hopes for Raya. And
I agree. That movie was really bad. And I thought the message that it sends kids was really terrible too. And I don't even remember what it is now because I hated it so much.
It's honestly one of the most forgettable movies I've ever seen.
Oh, I know what it was. The person that tried to kill her and like do all this terrible stuff to her at the last minute because she got beaten, apologized, and then they were all friends. And I'm like, that's called toxic behavior. Like, that's, you don't just go, hey, it's okay now. You just tried to kill me 2 seconds ago. There was no reconciliation. There was okay. Yeah, I remember why I hated that film. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Blast of the past there.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if this is controversial to you guys, but probably I'd throw Captain Marvel in there as well. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, but
it was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Brie Larson. I love Samuel L. Jackson. And yeah, that movie, I again just could not figure out what it was.
That doesn't hurt me as much as I'm going to hurt you. That's all I'm going to say. So.
All right. So I'm going to just rattle off a couple honorable mentions, if that's okay, to just smuggle in a few, and we can talk about any of them or none of them as you all see fit. So, Fantastic Four came to mind from 2005.
Oh man, Chris not Evans. The 2015 one.
Well, I didn't see the 2015 one.
Don't.
Yeah, but the 2005 one is worse. I'm sure. Like, I just can't imagine that it wouldn't be worse.
It's one of my guilty pleasures.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I do like Michael Chiklis from back in when he was on the Commish, which I grew up watching. But it was just such a mess. But my hotter take for an honorable mention is going to have to be The Passion of the Christ.
Wow.
And I leave it to Pastor Brannon to throw that one out. But like, I really, really have issues with that movie, not only as a cultural phenomenon and how like the church leveraged it as this kind of evangelistic opportunity, not only for like theological reasons of I don't know, misplaced emphasis, like 20 minutes of like torturing Jesus and lacerating him as the kind of emotional high point of the movie. And by the time he's actually crucified, it's like, oh, that's over. You know what I mean? Like there's this weird theological emphasis on the wrong syllable happening in the movie. And then like, you know, he rises again and, you know, you get to see his butt cheek and the hole in his hand or whatever. But yeah, just like as a movie, like as just like torture porn in the form of some kind of religious movie, I just really, really struggle with that one. And I think it makes it worse because it's like it's such a meaningful movie to so many people that, you know, are in my world within the church and stuff. So
Interesting.
You're not
Last
wrong,
Temptation
though.
of Christ.
no, actually, well, I think that movie's just boring. I mean, it's actually like I actually love the novel that film is based on, and I think the film is not nearly as I don't know, shocking or offensive as, because I remember as a child that film being boycotted. I mean, I was cognizant of the church's negative reaction to that film when it came out, and then when I finally saw it years later, I was like, what's the big deal about that? It's way too long and boring and kind of, you know, needs a good editor. But anyway,
I think that's the first time I've heard anyone say anything truthful, I guess. Passion of the Christ. I don't like it because you called it torture porn. That's what it is. Like, it's more relief that he's crucified instead of like I've always felt that way, and I guess it's not just me and my dad. That's good. Anyways, it's just, you're right. It's not the right tone, I guess. Is tone isn't even the greatest word for that. But I get your point, and I agree with you.
well, it's even just weird because it's like I understand how much it's based on like the Stations of the Cross, and it is the product of a very Catholic imagination that I appreciate on one level, theologically, etc. The way that that's sort of lost on evangelicals who just flocked to the film and bought out entire theaters to take their friends and neighbors is just very strange to me. I don't know, I don't want to rabbit trail on this too much, but it came out when I was living in Scotland during grad school.
Oh.
And the reaction to it in Britain was very different than the reaction to it that I was hearing about back home in the States. And so in Britain, their rating system is a little bit different than ours. And it was rated 18 for violence, which is closer to like an NC-17 rating in the States. And a lot of the kind of just popular conversation around it was around how offensively violent it was. But then I'm hearing about very different responses from the States, from my evangelical friends and family. And so that probably, gave me a different perspective on it, being outside of my own cultural context at the time.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought in the cultural context as well, because we assume that if a movie is good here, everybody loved it. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. I like hearing the different thoughts on that, because it was so. I remember because the church we were at had a whole, like, they would pick people up in buses and they would just go see it. Like, I remember that. I remember exactly what you're talking about how you either watched it or you weren't a Christian. Like, that's how it was treated. Yeah. And it was like, yeesh. So,
and if I could say one more thing, here's what bugged me the most as a pastor, as a theologian, is how many people I heard say things like, it just made it so real to me. Right. And I was at a church once where they showed clips from the scourging and the crucifixion during a communion service.
Mm-mm.
And they were kind of saying, like, and people's responses were like, it just makes it so real. And I'm going, okay, you read the Gospels and they're kind of like, and they crucified him. I mean, it's very like lacking in detail. It's like that's not the point, you know, like that he died is the point, that
Yes.
you know, that he suffered, yes. And then what symbol did he give us to make it real to us? He gave us bread and wine, right? But we somehow need the special effects and makeup and trickery of Hollywood, the illusion of a film, to make it more real to us in some way. And that just, there's something about that really bothers me. And like the simulacra replacing the, you know, the real thing.
Traditionalist indeed. Circle back to Sunday morning.
Yeah.
But no, you're not wrong. It's sad that we need fake to be real and up to be down and wrong to be right to feel good about things. Yeah. Anyways, we could go on a whole podcast about that, and I'd love to. Actually, I'd love to. That'd be great.
Sorry to get heavy, but
no, that was great. That's why I like doing this. Which now we need to do another one because I want to talk about that at length. Anyways, I don't know how to follow that now because my first one is the Love Guru, which is
Perfect.
complete other end of the spectrum. It ended his career for a good reason. That movie is trash. It's so bad. My second one is probably the worst film that Hugh Jackman has ever been a part of. And no, it's not The Greatest Showman. It's actually Pan. I can't do Pan. I've tried. I've never finished it. I fall asleep every single time. I cannot get through Pan. And the last one for me, look, I am a diehard Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. I love just about everything that comes out for Star Wars. And I have to say just about, because I could throw Rogue One in there just as easily as I could throw The Last Jedi in there. But The Last Jedi takes the cake for me because for what it was supposed to be and where it was, it just fell flat for me. Like if it was a standalone film, it'd be fantastic. But Canto Bight, the whole I saved you from diving into the space laser because there was I love you. Like they just met. Like where's Jar Jar to come out here? That would make sense to me. Darth Jar Jar pulls up. Like I hated it. It didn't make any sense to me. I have determined I don't like Rian Johnson now. I know that this hurts you, Connor. I'm sorry. But this okay, to be fair, this was my only interaction with Rian Johnson. I have not watched any of his other films.
Oh, well, you got to watch his other movies.
Yes.
But
go right back
to
to
first taste. It was not for me.
Go right back. Do not pass go until you do not collect $200 until you've watched Brick.
Yes.
And then move forward from there.
What is it? Brick.
I have it on DVD. If you can't find it streaming, I'll loan it to you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Brick. Okay.
I can't believe you throw Rogue One.
Notes, and then I was like, I should start taking notes of movies. So I've got a list. Brick. Okay.
I can't believe you throw Rogue One in there too. I mean, I'm an Episode 8 defender, honestly, and I love and have grown up on Star Wars. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you somewhat that in some ways it really doesn't fit into the trilogy, but like as a standalone film, I think he's really trying to do some interesting things. And I was working on a TV show whenever that came out, and it was really interesting because everyone on the show was like, "That's the best Star Wars movie I've seen." Because a lot of them weren't like diehard Star Wars fans, but they're like, "That's just like the most well-made Star Wars film that I've seen."
It's Empire Strikes Back, first of all. Sorry. Second of all. You're gonna hate this, but this is gonna deepen the controversy with my hate for The Last Jedi. If 8 was 7, we'd probably love the whole trilogy, and that would be the best movie in the trilogy. Like, just get rid of 7, start 8 where it started, and then move on, and it would have been way better. Make 7 a book. That's what they do with everything, anyways.
The books suck. I've read like
the extended
30 of the books.
Or you're talking about the stuff that's now like not canon anymore? That's like my whole bookshelf back here.
No, I meant like the recent ones.
Oh,
but there are a lot of
bad
bad
books
too, of the previous ones too.
I thought you meant the old stuff.
I mean, there's a lot of really bad old stuff. There's some good stuff, but
Thrawn gave us
I
the
was about to
best
say.
thing we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I do think this is a place though, like Connor was saying, where if like the more invested you are, the more you struggle. Because I know how much, Brad, you and your family love Star Wars, and I'm with you on Empire. Actually, my first movie, if I haven't told you this before, my first movie in the theater was Empire, but when it was re-released in
96. Yeah.
96, because I was a Nazarene pastor's kid. We didn't go to see movies, and my first movie in the cinema was after I turned 18, and my parents said, you're 18, you can do what you want. So I went to see Empire as my very first movie. I'd seen it before, but it was my first movie in the theater. But like I love and have seen every film as they've come out and all of that, but like I'm not nearly as invested in it as you are, and I just enjoy all of them. I don't I don't overthink them. I tend to not watch them over and over. I've seen them all probably more than once, but I haven't seen any of them like 10 times or something like that, and so I just enjoy all of them.
Empire, well, we should do comfort films also. That's in my brain because Empire is my comfort film. Devin will already know if it's on. She's like, "You had a bad day." Yes.
Yeah, that's really good.
Right. We're on to the gold medalists, aren't we? Yes, we are. Let's hear it. We are at number 1. Connor, what is the worst thing you have ever seen?
Man, there's another one. I'm still going back and forth on. I'm sorry. This time I won't list the other one though. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna say, and this has a little caveat.
Just tell me the one that's not gonna make it first.
Vampire's Kiss with Nick Cage.
Haven't seen it.
Never seen it.
It's terrible, but it's kind of amazing. Vampire's Kiss. But that is, and I feel like this maybe belongs on another list, but because there's a little caveat on it, because it's like probably the worst movie I've ever seen, but I love it so much, is Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I mean, like, how can you pass that up? Like, it is such a terrible piece of filmmaking, but that's why it's so entertaining. So yes, it is the worst, but at least it's like the most entertaining worst, like that's just fair. From a film perspective, like he kind of just did almost everything wrong in making it. But that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. So yeah.
So that's your number 1?
That's my number 1.
Hey. That again, that's like, I think we need another episode where we do like our favorite worst movies. Like that,
I mean, probably,
because that, or like the movies that we know are objectively terrible, but that we actually enjoy, and are glad we watched, right? Like, right. So I watched Sleepaway Camp recently, which is terrible, but but it's so bizarre too, and like it's a crazy train wreck of a horror film, and so. But I was like, okay, well, now I've seen it, and I didn't regret it at all that I watched it. I thought about putting that as an honorable mention, but I was like, no, because it wasn't it wasn't a movie that like I wished I hadn't seen or something.
Yeah.
So, all right, do you have any opinions on The Room, Brad? Before we,
he's right. It's terrible, but that's also its appeal. So he's right. What I will tell you is I already wrote 3 films for the favorite worst movies while you guys were talking. Sorry. I had to get them out before I forgot.
Yeah.
Was it The Disaster Artist? Was that the movie that they made about him, and the movie with James Franco and all of that?
Yes.
What do you think of that movie?
Not that great. I don't think the book is a fantastic read, and very insightful, and honestly really makes me appreciate Tommy Wiseau more, which is strange to say, but yeah, and then I think they just totally misinterpreted all of the material with The Disaster Artist. And it kind of seems like James Franco is like, I feel like I can do a good Tommy Wiseau impression. Why don't we make a movie about it?
Like that was the whole impetus for the film. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Mm-hmm. He's such an enigma, Tommy Wiseau. I mean, wouldn't it be great to kind of know the real story?
Read the book. You really,
it's fascinating.
Okay. It is fascinating.
All right. Ready for my number one? I'm gonna make you mad. I think I'm gonna make you mad. I certainly so 1988, when I was 9 years old. I didn't see it when I was 9. It's 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Robert Zemeckis. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh.
And here's why. All right. Because as I thought about doing this episode, I was like, after we do this, I'm going to rewatch it. But here's why I put it number 1 on my list, because it was the first movie that I watched and I went, I wish I could have those 2 hours back. That was dumb. I didn't get it. And I was about 14. So it was several years after it had come out.
Yeah.
So in 88, I was 9. I didn't see it. But at some point in the early to mid 90s, I watched it. And it was just, it's burned into my mind as like the movie that just made me like, it was the first movie that made me go, oh, there's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back. But I know historically its significance, its technical mastery, all of this stuff. And I can probably even intuit that a lot of the self-referential kind of humor I just didn't get at the time because I wasn't immersed enough in cinema, you know. And so I'm going to rewatch it, and I'm prepared to have my mind changed on it already. But that's why I was like, it's the first movie that comes to mind when I think about worst movies. It literally is, because I only ever watched it that one time, and I've never bothered watching it again. But I'm going to. So lay it on me.
I will say it is startling to
spicy.
watch at a younger age, because like I remember watching it and I was like, I feel like with the way that this is shot, like it's shot like a film noir, it's shot very gritty. It's definitely not a movie that's just made for kids. And I felt like, I'm like, should I be watching this? Like my parents said it was okay to watch this, but should I be? Like, because there is that griminess and grittiness to it. But I'm like, but there's Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Like what?
Yeah.
What? And so it really does subvert that. And honestly, like, on the technical aspects, I don't know how they did it. Like it is I watched that fairly recently and pretty soon before watching Chip and Dale. And that's one of the reasons why I hated Chip and Dale, was because I was like, they do it so poorly in Chip and Dale in comparison to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And amazing Bob Hoskins
5 years ago. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Bob Hoskins is incredible in that movie. It's fascinating. So
I know I'm wrong. I just wanted to save it for number 1, just for fun.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts when you rewatch it.
Well, and like, so the film noir thing, like when I studied film history in college, I got totally into film noir. I watched like everything I could get my hands on at the public library. But like I would have had none of that point of reference when I saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 8th grade or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
However, there's no wrong movie. This is all by opinion of the worst thing you've ever seen. So there's no wrong movies.
Yeah.
But that can be a sus take if you want to make it.
I can put it up there if you want. I'll just put it up there real briefly. Just a sus take. You know, there's a lot of times that I wish I could have time back. I specifically am thinking of 118 minutes of my time back from this past May. It is the most ridiculous movie I've ever seen. I hate it. Let me read you the review that I wrote directly seconds after the credits rolled on this movie. This is the movie that I would imagine if a toddler could write a script and give an idea for a film. It's a waste of talent, money, and time. Arguably one of the worst and most pointless films I have ever watched. After watching, I also considered pitching myself out of the room 180 window. It's The Lobster. It is the worst film that I have ever encountered. And they hyped it up. It's got Colin Farrell in it. I thought, okay, this could be pretty decent. I know that. Who was it? All I can think of is Scarlet Witch. I can't think of her real name.
Now I just lost it too.
Elizabeth
Olsen. Yeah.
Elizabeth Olsen. Because she just complained recently because she said, I had to choose my career, whether to be in The Lobster or whether to be in the MCU. So I said, oh, okay, I've got a free weekend. Devin and I sat down. I was like, let's watch The Lobster. Oh, it's terrible. It's so bad. I was shaking at the end because I'm like, okay, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Credits. Like so if you don't know the point of the movie, it's set in the future, where these people, if you're single, you get shipped to a hotel. The whole point is you have to find a mate. If you can't find a mate, you get turned into an animal and turned loose into the wild. That's the whole point of the film, which sounds kind of interesting, like not the worst plot line I've ever heard before, but it's just terrible. It's so terrible. And it's like literally the script itself almost sounds like people are saying, I am well today. How are you? I am also well today. That is good. Like it was that dry. Connor, am I wrong here? Like, was it that bad?
So, I mean, I almost threw it in as an honorable mention, but it's more so of my own personal take because that film gave me like I had the most visceral reaction to a movie after seeing that. Like I literally was like dry heaving after watching it because I mean I saw it in theaters. It was one of the movies that I was like looking forward to the most, and it was just to me one of the most disturbing films I've ever seen. But I think I mean I do think it's a well-made movie. Like I hate the director. I've watched his other stuff too, and it's equally disturbing. And he has a very interesting style to it. And so I think technically it's very well made, but there's just so much. It was just way too much for me. And I can handle like a lot of stuff, but that movie just kind of triggered in some things, especially at the time. Like stuff that I was going through was like exactly with what it was dealing with, and I was just like a mess after watching it. But.
And it's the worst that he spends this whole time not wanting to get turned into an animal for the end to be turned into the animal he didn't want to be turned into. So it was like this whole pointless. It felt like an existential crisis. Like I really felt like I was doing like a Jean-Paul Sartre thing. Like it was just so rough to go through that. If you are looking it up, Brandon, it's absolutely terrible.
No, so the funny thing is you mentioned it and I kind of went, I guess I didn't see that. I mean, I immediately knew what it was when you mentioned the title. And then I just was reading a plot synopsis. And I was like, no, I did see this movie. And I just must have blacked it out of my, like completely erased it from my memory.
Yes, that is exactly correct. It just, I can't top that. That is probably the most upset, like you said, the most visceral and most angry I've ever been at a film. It's just awful.
Him and like Lars von Trier's films are very similar, and Lars von Trier I also have a lot of visceral reactions to.
Yeah, he's one I think I've seen all of his films. And,
wow.
And like I know the reaction and the ambivalence that that they leave you with. We should do a whole Lars von Trier.
Oh man. I don't know if I can watch many of them again. I mean,
I wonder. We should see how many pastors we can find who've seen all of Lars von Trier's body of work besides me. But.
It's pretty slim, probably.
Probably. Yeah. Good pick, Brad. I mean, like if it's so, it's funny that like because I don't remember the visceral reaction. What I remember is just not like. Just being forgettable and just being like, why, again, it didn't even come to mind. And when you mentioned it, I couldn't even remember having seen it. But now looking at it, I'm sure that I did. And I think I just was like, well, okay, whatever.
I'm sorry you had to subject yourself to that film. I would like to send people get well soon cards if you've ever watched that film. Like that's how strongly I feel about this film. Like and reading the other reviews, I'm so glad I wasn't the only person that just absolutely hated it. Like it's nice to hate something and know that other people hate it too, so you don't feel alone in your hate. But that was definitely one of those things for me. But
I think his only other movie I've seen is The Favorite.
Oh, I've heard great things about that.
That was good. That one was good. Yeah.
Like Dogtooth. Like I like his work. I just didn't like The Lobster.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, thank you guys so much for your top 5 and Connor, in your case, top 2005. But either way, it was super fun. Thank you both for coming. Guys, like, subscribe, share, click, do your thing. You know where to find us. See ya.